Thank you. Thank you so much, Margaret and Urs. Urs, we didn't finish our conversation about Switzerland. Okay. I have a lot of compassion for the Swiss because Switzerland's so perfect. So anytime you put one toe outside Switzerland, there's so much suffering, you know? So for my Swiss friends who are delightful, it's kind of a joke that we have. And it's lovely to see some old friends here. And you're all very far away. I was going to say, well, anyway, I would move everybody up a bit because some people are there in the back and things. So feel free if you can't hear clearly. But I want to thank Margaret and Ocean of Compassion Buddhist Center, Urs, and all the other people. I just met a board member. I'm sorry, I can't remember your name. Linda? No. Sally. Thank you. And all the people that make this center possible. Thank you very much. So dealing with difficult people, I'm not very good at it. I'll tell you right now. So, I have been very fortunate. I've had a very fortunate life, and I'm very grateful to my teachers, especially Lama Zopa Rinpoche, who's who's the spiritual director of this center. So thank you, and it's nice to see the folks from Vajrapani and really via Shanti Deva Meditation Center in New York, and looking forward to going back and doing some things there in July later. And that's my closest center, the New York Center. So we have some people that moved out here. We let them go to California. It was a little problematic for us, but so thanks so much. So I teach pretty practically, so we have a very short evening. It ends at 9. Is it? So it's a short time. There will be time for questions. And so I'll just try to give you some tools to help you when you face some challenging people. So let's just put ourselves in the mood, have a little meditation. It's really nice, the center. I mean, it's interesting how they're so similar, some of the city entities that get going, and they're very similar vibration. And then this is a nice space like that. So just sit comfortably. Don't worry if you're not a great meditator, you don't sit a lot. You just sit, make sure your spine is as extended as possible, as if the back is straight. And you want to find a relaxed place for yourself as much as you can in the posture. Perfectly fine to sit in a chair. Just have your feet straight down so the body is balanced. And if it's possible, try not to lean too heavily against the back of the chair. So your back will become strong, like that. And you can close your eyes and slowly just bring your awareness to your breath as you allow the mind to settle in the space. And take a couple minutes to scan your body right now. Start at the top of your head and go all the way down through your body, even out your feet and toes, releasing any tension you find you're holding and bringing yourself to as relaxed a place as possible. And keep that normal, natural breath moving, and allow that breath to open up any space in the tension to help you release it. And make sure you check your brow and your neck and shoulders, your jaw. These are places we normally store tension. And allow your mind to slowly settle here into this space, letting go the outside distractions as much as you can. So I want to just start with a meditation. We did this at Vajrapani a couple weeks ago that will help to orient you a bit more into what we're going to discuss. So I'd like you to visualize now as best as you can a person across from you that you are challenged by. So take one difficult person, and they're just seated across from you. You could even have them walking toward you at this particular moment. And I'd like you to take yourself back to a very charged time you had with them. You had an argument. They did something to irritate you, to harm you. So if you can, roll back a bit to a couple minutes of that conversation, that interaction you had with them. Just try as best as you can. Now please notice as you're in this interaction with your difficult person, just notice right now, even sitting in the room, or you can remember what it was like during the interaction. How does it feel in your body and mind? Just observe with equanimity, meaning you're not judging anything, you're just observing. What was your intention in this interaction? What was your motivation? So what did you want to accomplish? And did you accomplish it? What do you think their motivation is or was? Have you ever considered that? Did they accomplish it? What's the story you have about this person? And is that story entirely accurate? Isn't it interesting how other people like this person? So is it the person? Or is it your mind? So look across at the person again. And just think that just like you, they want to be happy and they don't want to suffer. Just like you. So they may have a different way of going about being happy and avoiding suffering, but fundamentally, you want the exact same thing. You want to be happy and you don't want to suffer. You and your difficult person. So you now have something in common. So just observe them like that, from that perspective, for a moment. This person has Buddha nature. They have Buddha nature, a potential or a seed that can awaken into a fully realized being. You and this person. You both have that. Even though you find them difficult, even though you may label them jerk or stupid, they have Buddha nature. Every being with a mind has Buddha nature. Just like you. You have a second thing now in common with this person. So now turn the tables. We have an expression in our culture. Put yourself in someone else's shoes. Step into their shoes for a moment. Look out through their eyes back at you. What's that experience like? What's it like to be fighting with you? What's it like to have you angry at the person? So come back into your own shoes. is there any potential that you could find a way to say a kind word to this person that might build a bridge between the two of you? What would that be like? Something genuine. You can practice that. You can rehearse it. So now go back into the disturbing incident between the two of you, the interaction at the beginning of the meditation. You had an argument, had a disagreement, they harmed you, irritated you. You're back there and there they are in front of you. Now you are going to do it in a whole new way from your side. So have the conversation again. Okay, they may say and do the exact same things. How would you do it in a new way, a more positive way? You have to rehearse this. So try your best. And bring in as much as you can, motivated by compassionate wisdom. So just finish up your conversation and just observe anything arising and how you feel in your body and mind. And just look across at the person if there's any last acknowledgement, something you want to just look across at them and slowly allow them to dissolve back into the space from where they came. Please relax. You can open your eyes. And I also wanted to set us up with, may this time that we spend here be directed towards getting us to a place where we are fully awake so that we can be the most benefit to all others. So that's really the purpose that we're here right now, the purpose that I'm talking and things like that. So the only seats left are up front. Joking. And if anyone wants to move up, feel free. If you want to move your chair up as well, feel free. Like that. In the olden days, it used to be that there were all cushions on the floor. But now our bodies aren't very cooperative like that. So now we're just old, she said. Now we're just old. Any comments from the meditation? Is it helpful a little bit to start to get you into, this is a human being you're upset with, right? Just like you. Any observations you have? Yes?
I'm just wondering, to me it felt understandable and acceptable to contemplate the concepts that you talked about, that when someone's physically abusing you or parents who's not different.
Yep. So this is partly people physically abusing you, okay? And we're not doormats in the Buddhist path as a bodhisattva. You're not a doormat for abuse. So what I would say for people, if they start practicing, I have internal work and external work. What I mean is I have work on the cushion, and then I have work in front of people, out, off the cushion. So what I'm doing on the cushion is I'm working slowly with my mind about not blaming them, not yelling back at them, not abusing back, not making it all about that it's their fault, understanding where this comes from based on karma. I don't know if you have any teachings on karma, like understanding. So on my cushion, I'm realizing if I was abused physically or mentally in this life or any life, Buddhism would say it comes from imprints in my mind that I've caused in this life, previous moments, or in past lives. Okay, our teacher says everything comes from the mind. So I'm not blaming myself either. I'm just waking up and taking responsibility. Otherwise, I ask you, please think about where else does it come from? Where else does it come from? It's something we really have to think about. And I work with a lot of newer people too. When they get into this, nobody wants to suffer. I think a lot of people come to these centers because we don't want to suffer. Thank you. Fair enough. Nobody wants to suffer. But we first have to understand how we suffer to stop the suffering. You have to understand there's a cause for the suffering. So the first teachings the Buddha gave, the first one was there's suffering. And then the second one is there's a cause. Okay? But the third and fourth thing is that there's an end to the suffering and there's a path to the end. So it's very significant why the Buddha taught those four things first. And I didn't want to hear about suffering when I got into Buddhism, and then I found out the first thing he taught was suffering. I wanted to hear about love and happiness. I had no interest in suffering. But I didn't understand you can't get to love and happiness, or let's say pure unconditional love, ultimate happiness, until you've transcended your suffering and understand how you suffer. So, and I loved when in our Vajrapani retreat, the first week, Venerable Rene, we talked about emptiness. I'm going to talk about that a little later. Emptiness, the nature of reality. This cuts everything. This cuts all the suffering. And he said, once we find out this is the key to our freedom, why don't we study and meditate on it more? And he said, because number one, we don't understand how we suffer. And number two, we lack the merit. We lack the good conditions, right? So the suffering. So what I would do on my cushion is try to go through karma, understanding, to dismantle the mechanism that wants to run, harm back, attack back, blame, like that, because that doesn't get you anywhere. There has to be some way to make peace. first in yourself and then forgiveness and compassion with the other person. It's very difficult. I'm not saying it's not. It's very difficult in those cases. But you have to start somewhere to start to ease the pain of it. Okay? So slowly I would do that, and then when I'm in front of the person, there can be a case of extreme abuse when your wisdom is you need to be away from and apart from that person. Yeah.
Just to follow up with that, now I understand all the concepts you're talking about because I've come to this.
Can you speak up a little bit? Yeah.
I've come to this building before, and also this surgery event center where we started a little 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wanted to know in a Buddhist perspective, I mean, can you defend yourself, not punch back, but just at least restrain your arms from not biting
Sure.
anymore?
You can do that. I mean, what they'd say in the case of real physical violence, somebody has a knife, a gun, if you can somehow dismantle that, get away from it without harming back, you could try that. The first thing they say is run, get out of there. If there's real, get away from it, a gun, a knife, something like that, somebody beating you. Try to remove yourself from, again, like that. And if there's a way to gently deflect rather than hitting back, yeah, you could try that. You could try that. And then sometimes we just have to physically remove ourselves from the person, if it's possible, as soon as you can, and get help and get the support you need, things like that. Right. And then when you can do some therapy or work with them, mediation, and if it's possible, there are people abusers that have no interest in doing that work. So then you have to make a decision, that I'm either going to stay with them or I'm going to get my kids out of there. I'm going to try to find another situation, go to a shelter till I can get on my feet, have an intervention, talk to other family members to get support, get them out of the house, get a restraining order. There's a lot of other things. Again, as much as you can, motivated by compassionate wisdom, if it's possible. It's a big one. It's hard. It's a big one. Other observations? So the beginning you started, it's uncomfortable, isn't it? It's discomfort. Here comes my difficult person, right? I would love to see anything but them right now. I mean, that's our view, right? Yeah.
Well, when you asked the question, what is your motivation? Think about that. And I realized that in this particular instance that I was remembering is that my motivation was not pure. And I had to be careful not to blame myself. That's sort of right. I went, oh, wow. Okay. I thought that I was completely free of any issues, and I wasn't. I didn't come. I wasn't there compassionately, and it was a surprise to me.
Right, she's the only one like that here, right? Right? Yeah, thank you so much. I put her there to say that, okay? No, thank you very much, because, hey, we're human. Hey, I made a mistake. Like, fair enough, it's okay. And it's okay, because we're human. That's the statement of the state of the human condition is we are flawed. So I'm not laying a trip on anybody. Excuse me. But we make mistakes. So I show up and I think I'm right. I got my story going, I'm right. And then I realize, I'm not right at all. And it's very hard for our ego to kind of say, I made a mistake, I'm sorry. It's a big one for some people, some more than others. So yeah, so it's very helpful when I'm on my cushion and I go, what was my motivation in that? And wow, not very good. That's humbling. Gives me a bigger scope of heart possibly for the other person. Wow, for me, every time, once I did that thing of I turned around and I'm in their shoes, looking out from their eyes at me angry, is not pleasant, I promise you. So for me to fight with me, to see that, I was like, ooh, that's nasty, right? Because I always win, and I'm always right, and it's it's not right. So it's helpful like that, yeah. And then when you feel uncomfortable, the difficult person's there. We feel uncomfortable body and mind. Okay, life is uncomfortable. That's just how it is. So how do you deal with discomfort? Can you just be with it sometimes? We are a culture of human doings. We've lost our being. our beingness. Sometimes you just have to be with discomfort. Okay, it's not going to kill you. But we're always running. We're always immediately go to the phone, have chocolate, put the TV on. We're constantly trying to put a little Band-Aid on a hemorrhage. It's silly. Just face it. Wake up and face it. It's okay. You'll live through it. It's going to be okay. I find I'm more okay by just being with my discomfort sometimes. Because once you're with it for a while, you get used to it, you get good at it, then I'm more comfortable the next time in my discomfort. But if I'm always got the escape hatch well oiled, I'm always out of here, I'm never, one day at the time of death, you're going to be facing it. And there's no escaping that. So then where's your mind going to be? Right? Excuse me.
How does a person deal with discomfort?
So I would say you notice the feelings that come up in the body and mind, right? I can just, in a detached way, observe it. You notice how tight the chest gets at times. My mind will be like, all of that. And if you just hang with it, space opens up. Doesn't usually stay that way. But if I observe, like, where's the discomfort? You can actually analyze, where is the discomfort? So locate it in your body. But you go, oh, it's here. Okay, well, what's here? Well, you got tissue, and you got, like, rib cage and a heart, and there's space. And, really analyze it, because then you go, well, and what if you breathe? So the secular mindfulness movement now that is very popular and very hot in the United States and other countries, the secular mindfulness movement started by John Kabat-Zinn, who's a lovely guy. It's not really Buddhism, but it's super helpful. So use your breath. Here I am. Okay, I'm uncomfortable right now. Many things we're uncomfortable with. Okay, samsara, right? Samsara is a Sanskrit word. To turn, to cycle. We are cycling through birth, old age, sickness, and death. Birth, old age, sickness, and death. That's life. And that sucks. I'm sorry. But it does. That's its nature. That's its nature. Okay? So if I can understand the nature that samsara is like that, I'm less surprised, and it helps me to be with the discomfort. I accept it. That's how it is. The car breaks down sometimes. You get sick. You're having money issues. You don't like somebody at work. This is life. Right? But somehow we're always in our minds, really on a deep level, our realization is, I think I can just fix samsara. I think I'm going to be able to fix it. So we're bloody our head against a wall. And it's really, I hear people like, oh, as soon as I get the mortgage paid off, then I'm going to start my practice. Then I'm going to do a retreat. Soon as I get that special table for the altar, then I'm going to set up and have a practice. Soon as my kid graduates, then I'm going to do this thing that I wanted to do. But then there's something else. It's endless. It's endless. So I think that understanding that nature of it, some acceptance. This is how it is, right? But I actually analyze and go, where is it located? Okay. Is it only there in the heart? No, it's here. No, it's in my stomach. It's in, so analyze those spaces. And then they start, and then use the breath. What about a deep breath? I'm really uncomfortable right now. And you notice the first breath is edgy, okay? Take a second breath, third or fourth breath. And let it go. So maybe you're exhaling out some of the discomfort. You can visualize light rays, different colored light rays. You can visualize images that represent discomfort for you. As you inhale, light, positivity, serenity, tranquility. Exhale, negativity. Inhale, good intention. Exhale, me, myself, and I. So, you can play with it like that. Then I have other techniques you can try as well, but so sometimes it's just observing. I'm uncomfortable. Pema Chodron, I mentioned this in, I think, Saturday, and maybe Vajrapani, no, I can't remember, is, I just love this piece. This is from her one of her later books, Some of you maybe read it. Living Beautifully with Uncertainty and Change. Have you read that book? Read that book. It's so nice. I found it on retreat a couple years ago in the Laudo Library. Laudo is a remote retreat center near Mount Everest. I've done a lot of retreats there in Nepal. If you're interested in going there, I'm leading a group in late September, early October 2017. So you have over a year to get ready. Unfortunately, I only have one card left. And I have a website, amymiller.com, so there will be information up there in the next month, an itinerary. You guys are going, right? Right. You're going? You're going. Okay. You're going. Great. Karen was on a pilgrimage with me before.
And Mary, and her husband Bob, and Karen Smith. We're all going.
You're all going. Okay, great. We're going. Okay. So if you're interested, I have a card you can, but anyway, there will be information. But the nice thing is these students set up this website for me. God bless, so sweet. It's connected now to a YouTube channel. So they pulled in teachings like this, but I categorize them by topic. So it's helpful if you want happiness, if you want meditation. Some people found some helpful things there, but I am going to try soon to get the itinerary. It's almost done. And then I'm going to have an information page for you to find out what kind of shoes do I need and what are we doing and what do we eat up there, and and believe it or not, just sitting in a parking lot waiting to come here. Some of you have Facebook Messenger. So anyway, I don't really like all these things, but I have that because people try to contact me. And I was messaging. Somebody was messaging me from Laudo. 14,000 feet up, there's a woman up there right now, and Rinpoche's sister lives there. She's a nun, 72 years old. She's a trip. And amazing. And so she started saying, Anila's been talking about you, and she's excited that you're coming, and from Laudo. It used to be, there was nothing there. There was nothing, no electricity, no water. So now there's Facebook Messenger. Okay. Okay. We knew one day it would happen. So that way at least you can feel like not so freaked out that you're up there. And I used to go up there to totally cut off. But okay, so Pema Chodron's book there's one chapter called The Fundamental Ambiguity of Being Human. Okay? And it starts with a quote from Suzuki Roshi. Life is like stepping into a boat that is about to sail out to sea and sink. Okay? This is our situation. Suzuki Roshi is a Zen master.
Which one? The two.
Shunru. Suzuki Roshi. Okay? So life is like stepping out into a boat that is about to sail out to sea and sink. So the feeling of that there's this uncertainty and groundlessness to being human, okay? And difficult people appear in that realm. And we mostly are patterned and influenced by our environment that's not okay. It's not normal, we're going to fix it. They will go away permanently and all that. Now, on the Dharma path, you can have them go away permanently. How do we do it? We fix our mind. It's not out there, it's in our mind. Because when I said to you at one point, does anybody else, and I ask any of you, does somebody like your difficult person? Yeah, right? Yeah. Well, isn't that amazing? Somebody likes them? I don't, right? And they become solidly difficult from their side. So Buddhism says they don't exist that way at all, because if they are solidly, inherently difficult, meaning with their own character of difficultness, from their own side, everybody would see them that way. That's how inherently existing beings and things are. They're like that, frozen in time for all beings. Okay? But some people like that person and some people don't. Okay? So that's interesting. The karmic imprints in my mind are causing me to project something out on the data that's out there, the information. Okay? So here's another thing that goes on that helps me deal with my difficult person. I mentioned this a little bit at Vajrapani, I think. So here comes your difficult person walking towards you, right? Okay? Let's analyze what's really there. What makes them so difficult? Well, I've got a fleshy oblong thing here, okay? And it has a couple of circles that have color. It's got a hole here and sound comes out of this, okay? And there's some material here, okay? That's attached to a longer torso thing that's covered in material. And then there's 4 appendages. That's the data. I'm giving you the raw data that's there. Now they're walking toward me. Now what happens in my mind and my consciousness is I have karmic propensities or seeds in there that are ripening and coming to fruition. I planted those seeds before. How did I do it? Any activity of my body, speech, and mind. I said something, I thought something, I did something. And in this case, it was something negative that I thought, said, or did. And what it does is it plants a seed of negativity in there. And now that seed happens to be ripening. How does it ripen? I have no idea. You have to be quite highly realized to understand the ripening effects of karma. Okay? But they do ripen, they definitely ripen, unless you purify in advance or destroy good seeds with a lot of anger. Okay? But now I've got some negative seeds ripening. And what that does, those negative seeds, it causes me to project out on that raw data of the fleshy oblong thing with the hole here that has sound and the longer torso thing and the 4 appendages. I now project something out there that underestimates what's really there. Underestimates what's there. And when you underestimate something, you're seeing less than what's there. And once I see less than what's there, I don't like it. I have aversion, gets activated. Hatred, anger, disappointment, frustration, irritation, annoyance, any of those things, right? That's all that's happening. So the more you sit on your cushion with that and analyze and understand, a little bit more peaceful when I see those things arise in my mind. Okay? I mean, the only thing I can really say, one thing I can say after all these years of practice is I don't have any realizations, but I'm just able to watch my mind a little bit more go through its somersaults so that I'm less reactive. So I'm less reactive. Okay? So that's all that's going on. I'm underestimating the data that's out there, not seeing clearly what's there. Why? Unless you've had a direct perception of emptiness, the nature of reality, you misknow reality. K-N-O-W. You have a misknowing. You're not seeing it clearly, but we think we are. We think we are. Our entire environment reinforces that we are right. What we're observing, we are correct in our perspective. So you have a valid perspective. You have a valid perspective, but you have to understand, unless you're a Buddha, unless you're a highly realized being, unless you have a direct perception of emptiness, your perspective is limited. Do we ever think that we're limited? So when I said to you, what's the story you get going about the person? Did you have a story? Right? Often we get a story going, many times. I always tell the story of Vajrapani because there's a couple people from Vajrapani, and thank you for, I'm so sorry I cut you off with the number for Judith on the phone, Kelsey. What happened is somebody came up to me right then and said, you can't have your speakerphone on right now. And I couldn't have the speakerphone on by getting the number. And then I just went, okay, thank you, give me the number, bye. I was picking somebody up to take them home from the retreat, so, and she was very nice to give me the phone number, thank you. And it all worked out beautifully. So, okay, so this limited perspective, very, very challenging that we think we're right. So I had one story years ago. I was working at Vajrapani in the woods, in the Redwoods in Boulder Creek. Some of you have been there. And we had a cook. You probably, Jim, you've heard about him. Maybe. Anyway, he's a great guy, lives in Felton. I just saw him last week. He was a cook. He's a big guy, a little imposing. At the time, he was a big guy. And he sometimes was very sarcastic. And he is a great friend of mine. So I came in the building in my little bubble. Right? We have my little me, myself, and I trip comes down to work. And I come in, good morning. So he barks something rudely at me. This happens with your difficult person. And I'm immediately put off and suddenly kind of angry, because it didn't go the way I wanted it to go. But I've no conception of him or what might be going on for him. So I immediately leave the kitchen and I go up to my office and I start working. and 2 hours go by, but in the 2 hours I'm revisiting. I'm doing analytical meditation on how I feel about Jim. We talk about analytical meditation, right? This is part of our path. You know, you have a placement meditation, you're shine, focusing on one thing, and you have analytical meditation, you're analyzing something, just like we did with the difficult person, okay? So analytical meditation asks you to check from every viewpoint, you know, about this and this, till you convince yourself, till you take an intellectual an intellectual understanding of something and move it to an experiential realization. And that's what changes your mind and your life. Okay? So I'm up there doing an analytical meditation, not consciously, just when you're angry, he's such a jerk and he's stupid and I can't stand when he does that. And he's holding the center hostage with his anger and his cynicism. This is my analytical meditation. Not positive, not helpful, but I'm convincing myself from it that he's a jerk over and over and over. You know, now he's down there cooking food for the retreaters with that anger, and I'm going to have to eat that garbage. I mean, this is what's going. So 2 hours later, staff person shows up in my office. Did you hear what happened to Jim this morning? And all I have to hear is his name, and I'm like, what? You know, I'm done. And then they said, I had my story about him. My story was right. The story was, there was another story. And the story was that he had a bad health issue the month before. So he was a little bit sick that morning. Because of that, he had a fight with his partner, that you're not taking care of yourself. You're going to be in the hospital again. He felt bad. They had a fight, right? They couldn't find one of their cats. And we live in an area where there's coyotes that could eat the cats. But still he comes down to cook because it's too late to get somebody to fill in for him, and that's his responsibility. He's very good-hearted to do his responsibility. He's always good like that, right? So now I hear that story, and now I'm like, wah, wah, right? Totally wrong. So I run downstairs, throw my arms around him. I'm so sorry. Can I help you? And then there's connection. So we're trying to get connected because we're already fragmented enough on this planet. We're already alienated enough. Our job is to try to make create healthy relationships with people as much as you can, especially the difficult ones. Some of them are more challenging. Physical, mental abuse over and over and over. It's very challenging to do that, but it's possible. It will take time. Forgiveness of yourself and other over a long period of time. Therapy can be very helpful. Dharma practice can be very helpful, but it takes time, but it works. It's a process. This is a process. You know, you don't get enlightened in 2 weeks, generally. Okay? I wish you could, but so basically this is kind of what goes on, is in the process of waking up to your mind again, every day showing up of like, okay, what's happening today? And there's going to be these people that poke you. Pema Chodron's thing is, your practice is whatever's walking towards you at any given moment. Where's your mind? Is your mind spacious, open? Am I already automatic with the motivation of compassionate wisdom? Is that automatically going? Or is it more me, myself, and I? Self-cherishing. Like, what do I want out of this? You know, so this is a process. So that's why we call it Buddhist practice. Spiritual practice, because you rehearse it. You have to rehearse. Like you play a sport, you play an instrument, you learn how to use your smartphone. You practice. And then after a couple weeks, automatic. Like that. Much better at it. You know, so please have the patience like that. And that's part of the nature. So with samsara, we're always trying to fix something. It's not possible to fix it. I think Geshe Jampa Tekshog's statement about if you're in a swimming pool filled with water, the nature of water is moisture, right? So if you're in a swimming pool filled with water, you're not flailing around yelling, it's wet here. That's its nature. But this is what we do with samsara all the time. You know? I'm disgusted with this person's irritating me. My car broke down. I have the flu. I'm sick of my kid. This is a constant, but this is its nature. So if I'm just accept more samsara, some acceptance of, okay, I don't like this, but this is how it is sometimes. It doesn't mean you don't work to improve things, okay? But again, with compassionate wisdom. We were joking about in Saturday, I think, and maybe Vajrapani, some years ago when I lived at Vajrapani, that perfume company invented a new fragrance, some of you might remember this, called samsara, okay? It's a sexy word, I guess. They thought, they didn't know what it meant. It's a sexy word, but I mean, we thought it was so funny, the Buddhists. We're like, did you hear about this perfume? Who needs more of that, right? Okay. And then they had ads. I remember the ads, samsara, right? So we get deceived. We think we can, it'll all work out. Pema Chodron's thing, I love this, about this fundamental ambiguity of being human. What is it like to realize we can never completely and finally get it all together? I found that so liberating, okay? What is it like to realize we can never completely and finally get it all together? Relax. You're never going to have it all together. Just relax. But you do the best you can, right? That's all you can do. That's all you can do. So you just keep moving. You keep moving forward. Sometimes you'll move a step back. And it's nice sometimes moving a step back. Why? You get a bigger perspective. You move forward, you mess up, you fall on your face, pick yourself up. If I step back, right, then it's a little bit like, oh, what happened? What happened there? Okay? So just some things you can think about in relation to the difficult person. So how do we create positive relationships with people that we don't like? Okay? So it's a combination for me. It's a few different things that I'm doing. So I'll give you an example. I worked with a man when I was, it's so nice to be back in California. It's kind of my, really my last home. I left here about 12 years ago, but I lived here, I think I was based in California about 17 years. So a lot of my adult life was in California. A lot of my Dharma life was here. And when I decided, I worked 2 months, believe it or not, at Land of Medicine Buddha. I lived there for 2 months. I was so miserable. Had nothing to do with Land of Medicine Buddha. It just wasn't the way it was now. Now it's very nice. And then Rinpoche came and plucked me out of there and said, maybe good to go to the city with Carol, Venerable Carol Karate, who we kind of co-founded Seichen Ling. So we lived together for 3 years in the 90s. And it was her home, private home in Noe Valley. And what was so funny was the other day, I finished teaching Saturday at this city at Seichen Ling. And she and I were going to spend the rest of the day together. And it was very foggy the few days in the city, right after I saw Karen. And it was very foggy. So suddenly I came out of the teaching and the fog totally lifted. And we went out and I said, do you want to do a little tourist trip? So we went around to kind of old haunts and we went to the house we lived in, Noe Valley, top of 23rd Street. So we went up there and we pull in the driveway, right? And it's all different, like really different, right? So we're both like, whoa. And we had a garden, everything was gone. And anyway, they had just finished a 13-month renovation to the house. So what happens is Carol's like, I got to get a photo of this. I said, okay. It's all modern anyways. So we're out there taking photos and a woman comes outside. It's set back, the house. She comes out and she looks at us and then she goes, it's the woman Carol sold the house to 20 years ago, okay? So we walk in and she knew her and they're there and she says, like, we just moved back in this week. 13-month, they gutted the house, okay? Unbelievable. So she gave us a tour. It was so funny, and it's amazing. And Carol's like, oh, that was your bedroom, and that was it. So then we said about there were some extraordinary lamas that were here in this building. And she said, we know, we heard. And then she and her girlfriend were like, and there's 2 nuns now. And can we get your photo? Like, it was just so cute. So so I was with Carol, and 3 years there, and sorry, it was a tangent, so now I can't remember at all what I was going to say. Let's see if I can try to remember anyway, doesn't matter. So So what I was going to say is, in just in general, 3 years in San Francisco, and how you're kind of trying to deal with different uncertainty and stuff as different uncertainty comes up. And let me just see, what was the rest of that thought? Anyway, I'll go on with something. I'll come back to that. So it was so fun going around and thinking, so I moved up to the city, and then so I was temping. This is what I was going to say. I was temping half the month to support myself, and Carol gave me a room in the house to run the center because she was a full-time engineer. So she paid for the house and paid for most everything, but she didn't have the time to run it. So I was kind of managing the center, doing the program. We had all these lamas come. Rinpoche came a few times, and it was great. So I was working two weeks a month, temping at law firms downtown. And I was placed at all these different law firms, and I had these great contracts. They paid me a lot of money, and I worked with different lawyers. And then they assigned me for like a month with this guy, Ted, an older lawyer who had moved up from the Pasadena area to start this big law firm in San Francisco with all these people. So, somehow he was a little old school for me. And I had just come back from India for a couple of years in India, and I'm with this guy. And so I'm a little bit not happy with a part of my life temping, because I had had a career before that of something else, right? So now I'm temping, but my intention was to help the center. So it's really what I want to do. But sometimes it's hard. You make a decision, but it's tricky. So Ted would come out on a Monday morning with his disgusting coffee mug for me to wash. And I somehow felt that wasn't my job as the secretary, to wash the coffee mug. You get these ideas. And I think my sister was older than me, and she had these things, like, you don't do things like that. It's not what we're supposed to do. We don't take lawn, like dry cleaning. That's not our thing. So I had this kind of attitude. And he'd bring it out, and then I started to really resent him. And he became, the jerk at work, basically, Ted, the other. So Lama Zopa Rinpoche, though, when you hear him teach, and I think I mentioned this before at the other things, when you hear Rinpoche teach, some of you have heard Lama Zopa Rinpoche teach. So Rinpoche, when you talk about benefiting all sentient beings, he's like, all sentient beings. It's for all, the emphasis is on the all sentient beings, right? So I, every morning, had my motivation, my, quite superficial motivation. I want to practice to become a Buddha to benefit all living beings, except Ted. That was my view. Seriously, like I'd get into work, and I had this motivation. I go to work, everything's great on Muni, I love everybody, and then I'd see Ted, and then the coffee mug, which really only came out on Monday morning, because it'd be there all weekend with the coffee, okay. So I found this thing, and I start to get tense and stressed. I just see him, and I get all this stuff. So the thing is, be reasonable. Be reasonable. You're allowed to take breaks. You're breathing anyway. I'd find myself getting stressed. How do you notice you're getting stressed? From my meditation practice. I had enough observation of the mind, observing my mind shutting down, all the doors and windows shutting, and now I'm like, I hate, and then as soon as the doors and windows shut, I notice my mind telling me negative stories. I don't want to do this work. Why am I doing this? I should have stayed in India. I should never have gone to India in the first place. I had my career. I'm not making enough money. I hate my life. None of it was really true, but you just start looping in a negative space because one little thing sets you off. Okay, so breathe. You can just slow yourself down and breathe. Okay, there's nothing wrong with slowing your mind down to observe sometimes the silly somersaults that you're making it leap through. Okay? Doesn't mean you can't do what you're doing to slow your mind down. You actually get more done, by the way. That's what I found. So what I would do is I'd get all upset, and then I'm like, this is crazy. I'd go in the bathroom. You're allowed. Nobody's going to question what you're doing in there, right? I'd just go in there. I didn't have to go to the bathroom. I would just go back, breathe. After the fourth deep breath, I kind of calm myself down. Now I had perspective. Okay? And then what I do is reestablish my motivation. Oh yeah, I want to help the center. That gives me a lot of meaning, a lot of happiness. I chose it, actually. I could go back to the career, but I know that's not going to be so meaningful for me. So I really want to do this. The center's going well. Really happy to help Carol. Rinpoche's really happy. So all these things I really chose to do. How fantastic that I get 2 weeks of work a month that's under my control. I could work whenever I wanted. Easy work for nice people, basically, in a great environment, like well paid. What's the problem? There really wasn't a problem. But you have to analyze, you have to check. Otherwise there was a problem. But when I checked, I'm like, can't really identify a problem. And then I'm like, moldy coffee mug. So I was like, okay, what's the problem with that? Again, please analyze. You have to do this work. You have to make the effort. I'm sorry, it does take some effort. So I analyzed. If you asked me to wash your moldy coffee cup, I would do it in a second. Why? Because I like Margaret. She's my friend, right? We do it for our friends. Never question. Never think about it, right? Whether you're at a friend's house or whether they come to your house, you get up sometimes and you try washing the dishes. You have a meal, and they go, oh, no, don't bother. But you immediately, oh, let me do that. Oh, no, I'm happy to do that. But not for Ted. But really, so what I thought is, God, I would do this for my friends. It's one mug, right? And then I thought about Ted. He's always respectful to me, always polite. You know, he'd always say on Monday, how was your weekend? Like really interested. Some other lawyers didn't do that. You know, very kind man. I met his wife. I liked her. Then I realized I started to get to know him a little bit. He left Pasadena. He had a nice house in Pasadena. His kids are down there. He enjoyed very much his life down there. But he came up to try with this new law firm, a branchless law firm. He wanted to get it going. And he said sometimes it was challenging for him living in San Francisco. The new stuff. He had it all set in Pasadena. So it's like, what's that like? You move cities and different than what I started thinking about him a little bit. So slowly over the course, I think I worked for him for a month, we got to know each other. The enemy you're not interested in knowing. So make a little, so when I said to you in the meditation, is there some genuine kindness you can show the person? A little thing. I've done it with people I felt really adverse to, and then what happens is if you have an enemy, you call them enemy, right? You're separate. You call them enemy. And what happens is if you see your friend with a new blouse on, new shoes, you immediately go, oh, you got a new blouse? I like your hair. Cute, right? But the enemy, we're like, I'm afraid to go there because I'm a little bit afraid of them, too. And I'm afraid of where my mind goes with them. So I don't want to say anything positive to them. I'm not used to that with people I don't like. But as soon as you say some positive thing to them, it has to be sincere, okay? It's often, many times, incredible transformation between you and them. The bridge all of a sudden is there, built, right? So you could check up on that a little bit. So what happened over the course of this month is Ted and I became friends. Seriously. And then what happened in the last week that I was working for him, it's Monday morning. It's my last Monday with him. And I'm anticipating now the coffee mug. I want to wash it. I'm happy to do that. I'm ready for it. Totally, He walks out of his office. He's got it like this. And he comes out, and I had to say, hey, Amy, how was your weekend? And I said, great. And I said, how was yours? Great. And we start talking about what we were doing, how it's going. Great. And then I'm starting to reach for the coffee mug, and he starts to hand it to me, and he looks in it, and he sees what's in it, how disgusting. And he goes, okay, oh my God, I can't have you wash this. It's disgusting. And I said, no, I want to wash it, please. And there we were, tussling over this coffee mug, like friends do. Okay. So he went away as my difficult person. I started to look forward to seeing him in a really positive way. So again, you have to try to find little ways through analysis, analytical meditation that we are very good at doing. We think we're not, but we are, is often not focused in the best way. Meaning when I was obsessing about Jim and all his negative traits is not a positive way to do analytical meditation. I was analyzing, but analyzing to convince myself that he was a jerk. Okay. So analytical meditation that we do is trying to really analyze underneath why I think Ted is a jerk, and I couldn't find a reason why. I convinced myself that it was just in my mind some karmic seeds firing of negativity that caused me to make him other. Does it make sense? Yes. What's your name?
My name is Chanel.
Chanel?
Yeah. I have a question too. And this particular question should always talk to the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha. But I'm also wondering in these situations to also contribute to Tara or
Avalokiteshvara. Avalokiteshvara. Chenrezig in Tibetan. Chenrezig. The Buddha of infinite compassion. We have a picture of that Buddha. They're right over there. Thousand-arm Chenrezig. Or Avalokiteshvara in Sanskrit. He's the Buddha that this particular form, the white circle around him is all his hands, is the one that His Holiness the Dalai Lama said to be an embodiment of. Buddha of infinite compassion.
So I'm just not sure, like, if I'm a quiet meditation. I live with someone who's verbally abusive to me, morning, noon, and night.
Can you speak up? I'm having trouble hearing. Sorry.
I live with someone who's very abusive, morning, noon, and night. And because he is a family member, and I have to take care of him because he's an elder, I don't know how to break up that space to where, like you're saying, your heart starts beating and you're anticipating.
I mean, I think it's a question whether you say I have to take care of him if he's abusive, continuing to be abusive, seriously, with a family member. On one level, I would see if there's options to use humor. I'll give you an example. My father, I live with him. He's 89 years old. I live with him part of the year. I really want to live with him part of the year and help him. He also can be kind of emotionally abusive. He had a habit with my mom. He's a good man, but it's just an old habit. 50-some years, my mom's gone now. So I would come down for breakfast some days, and just out of habit, I would hear, "You look like crap." Okay? Right. So I've done way too much work on myself to put up with that. Honestly, it's not okay. It's a minor thing, but it's really not okay. But I know where he comes from. I know his whole scene, and I know, So instead of getting into it, I've done, now it's quite different, but I've said to him, "Well, good morning to you, bundle of sunshine." And then he realizes, he's got a trigger that's not okay. That's kind of part of the things. And I've had some real talks with him in a nice way that this isn't okay. I'm not mom, and that's not going to work for me. So I'm really happy to be here for you. I want to be here for you. I'd like you to have as much integrity and care in your old age as you'd like to do it the way you want to do it. But I'm not here for the abuse. So it's your choice. You can continue to perpetuate a pattern, and I'll live elsewhere. Or we're going to figure out how people share space together. And he's really responded. And when you're in your 80s, that's hard to adapt. And I'm very proud of him. And we have a good time. We're really doing really well, and it's been a year, February. And I really want to do it, and it's been great. And he's really great. So now some people are much worse than that. So it's really, I think, a question about your own health. If you can find a way to have a compassionate conversation with them in a good space. Some people are not open at all, and you make a decision whether you share the responsibility with other people. There's other caregivers. Sometimes when it's family members, they're rougher on us than an independent caregiver. They won't treat the other person, the stranger, like that. And there's different support networks you can get. And then there's some people based on karma, he only treats me that way, not my brother or sister. And they've noticed it. Only me. It's my ride. Okay. So what I also do is it's my karma. I'm like, okay, this is my mind. Like I got some work to do here. And we're doing it. We're doing a great dance, and it's changing dramatic. It's been changing dramatically, but it's just it doesn't happen. My sister and brother aren't there; they don't live with him. So, again, somebody removed, it's different. It's my mom. That's how he was. My mom. He needs that pattern. So I don't know if it's possible to have that kind of conversation, and but part of it takes your owning up and responsibility about your own health. And everybody's at different phases, slowly, working your way into that when you feel comfortable doing that and getting a little bit of support doing it. Because my sister and brother are very supportive of me and sometimes feed back to him that it's not okay. I don't know if that speaks to the... But slowly, again. You're not going to throw him into the street, or him or her, whoever. You don't want to, it has to be an approach of making sure there's care and things. But I have seen people with close loved ones caregiving, and the close loved one is just so abusive, and they finally were like, I have a very close friend in Vermont. Her mom came to live with them, her and her husband, for a few years. She made a very nice arrangement, and the mother just chewed her to pieces. Unbelievable. Well, I couldn't believe sometimes what I witnessed. And finally, there was one final straw, and she put the mother in a nursing home. And the mother railed at her, and she said, well, I've there were several warnings, and I told you, but that's not okay. That's enough right now. And I think it's the best you can do. And she gets good care there, and my friend goes and sees her, and, so you don't want to, you're not going to dump somebody out on the street and like that. Yes.
I was wondering if you could talk about the difference or the line between having compassion for somebody that is difficult and the difference between having compassion and then there's sometimes a righteousness around it. Well, if I let them get away with this, then somehow I'm, not doing the right thing. And I think that's kind of a Western thought of I'm right and you're wrong, but I see I'm just...
Letting the abuser get away with stuff, you're saying?
Well, the idea
Trying to understand the question, yeah.
that if you have compassion, you can have compassion and not let someone get away.
Yeah, so there's a couple words you're familiar with, I'm sure. Codependence and enabling. So bodhisattvas don't do that. Bodhisattva is a Buddhist saint that's trying to think of others more than yourself. And so it doesn't mean you're a doormat for people. And so I think with compassionate wisdom, there's very clear line. The way I said to my father, I'm here to help you with all my good intention, but I'm not here for the abuse. I'm sorry. Because that's not good for him. That was my mindset. It's really not good for him. Now, it's not good for me, but I really thought of him. I'm like, he doesn't need to be doing this anymore. So I think with those, it makes sure the intention is clear, that you set boundaries. I think boundaries are healthy. Lamas set boundaries. When they've stayed with us at different centers or in our house, Rinpoche often, so a lot of the lamas, you don't even talk to them in the morning. They're doing their practice. So they set boundaries and are very clear about certain things. And I think it's okay to do that with somebody. But you're coming from a good place with that. I don't know if that answers the thing. And as long as you think you're aligned with compassion as much as you can be. And so it's not just saying, oh, I should just let them be and that's compassionate. I wouldn't put up with that. I don't think that's the best response. So let's analyze a little bit more with emptiness. And there's some other things you can also look at with difficult people. Partly the meditation is a container that holds a lot of the tools, so you've got the just as I want to be happy and don't want to suffer. It's a great one you can quickly use. I used to be at board meetings or staff meetings. I worked for this magazine years ago in Mother Jones magazine. You familiar? Anyway, I worked for them for a couple of years in San Francisco when I was a new Buddhist. And I was just learning these things, right? So we had a few strong personalities in the office. I was just with somebody from Mother Jones the other day, from our days, and he said, we were talking about somebody, and he said he was mean. And there was some formidable characters. So I would be at this management meeting, there were maybe 10 of us, and I was the newest person, and then I saw how they just, bring their agendas out there and their budgets and their fighting, and I'm like a new Buddhist thinking, I didn't really want to do this with these people. But so sometimes just sitting there in the meeting, I started, somebody I was a little adverse to, oh, just as I want to be happy and don't want to suffer, he wants to be happy, he doesn't want to suffer. I just say to myself, nobody knew I was doing that, but I didn't have to speak at the meeting yet. It wasn't my turn. So I'm watching them fighting over there, and I think, just as I want to be happy and don't want to suffer, he wants to be happy, doesn't want to suffer. And so I worked with that for a while, like we actually want the same thing. He does it in a different way, but fundamentally it's the same thing. Everybody wants to be happy and doesn't want to suffer. I would think about Buddha nature. Everyone has that seed of awakening. Things like that. Then on a higher level, the teachings of how to develop bodhicitta, the enlightened attitude, how to develop bodhicitta, there's 2 methods, right? The second method is equalizing, exchanging oneself with others. So when I said, turn the tables, put yourself in their shoes, look out from their eyes, another great technique. We're so consumed with ourselves. Now, if you can't do it in the conflict when they're in front of you, that's difficult, right? That's why I go back to my cushion. Some quiet time alone. You blew up at somebody during the day. You had horrible thoughts about somebody. You were snippy to somebody, rude, insensitive, whatever happened. You shut down on somebody. I'm not speaking to them. And then I can't deal with it there, so I go back to my cushion. And then I'm like, what happened today? Completely toppled. Unbelievable. So go in there and analyze. Look at what happened. What was I thinking? What did I want? Did I get what I want? Was what I wanted reasonable? Sometimes it's not reasonable. What was my story? Was my story accurate? What did they want? Slowly you chip away a little bit. Okay. And then if we want to look at emptiness, the nature of reality, how does it work in emptiness? So again, you've got the raw data out there. So look at this person. There's no inherently existent enemy out there. There's no inherently existent enemy out there. What does that mean? Some of you, I know, have had teachings on the nature of reality, of emptiness. Inherent existence, these are synonyms, okay? Concrete existence, independent nature, existing from its own side, with its own character. Okay, those kind of things are reified, okay, concretized. Things exist independently. That's the way we interact with our reality. Okay, and that's a mistake. Nothing exists inherently. Everything exists, everything arises, comes into existence based on other things. 3 main ways we look at it. Okay? Dependent arising. They exist based on causes and conditions. Okay, here's your difficult person. Okay? They exist based on causes and conditions. Okay? So they have their karmic seeds at play. Their parents created them. Okay? I have karmic seeds in my mind. I have some negative ones ripening right now that are causing me to project on this person aversion, something negative. That's another cause and condition, making them enemy, making them difficult, making them challenging, like that. Okay? Causes and conditions. And then they also exist based on their parts. The parts, we looked at a few of the parts, fleshy oblong thing, torso, 4 appendages, material, color here, sound comes out of here. And then you could analyze those parts further. So slowly, these are the parts of the being. So how does the being, so I'm looking for a difficult person in those parts. And you spend time in emptiness meditation. First, you want to have a good intellectual understanding of emptiness. Meaning reading some books on emptiness. Basic books. Start with small books, then bigger books. Come to teachings on emptiness. How does it work? How do I think about it? Then in between in your day, you like to see everything as a product. Because in emptiness, you notice everything arises and it's got parts. So it's a product. If there's nothing that's just inherently here. This is a product. It has stems and leaves, inside and an outside, and cells on a molecular level. Everything. Look at everything. You say carpet, and carpet seems kind of solid. It's under us. It's kind of sitting. But if you really look at the carpet, well, there's all these woven things and dark colors and light colors, and now we know it's made of thread, and there's a backing, and the thread is contains molecules. So everything's a product of something else, right? Okay? So it's just the way you start to see everything as a product. So if you want to look at the fleshy oblong thing here and the torso and the four appendages, look in the parts for the enemy. Where is there a concretely existing enemy in the parts? Can you find it in the parts? Do you ever think about it? Okay? Because that difficult person's out there and they feel very real, don't they? Solidly existing difficult person. Solidly existing irritating person. That's how they appear, right? It sucks. I know we don't like it. Solidly, that's how they are. So you have to look for them. You have to spend time on your cushion. I analyze Ted. I'd be so irritated, here. And when you do get irritated, another thing to think about, if you have a person, you couldn't really think of somebody, but you thought of maybe a world figure. Some people go, I don't really have an enemy. But they have somebody famous in the news they don't like. Okay? We all know somebody right now. Maybe. Okay? So when I worked in kind of more liberal politics, I just got together with some people from those days in North Carolina, and we decided to just call somebody that we were talking about, because we had this big political conversation. We decided to just call someone, he who shall not be named. Okay? It was like a Harry Potter thing, he who shall not be named, right? But sometimes you have somebody more prominent like that. So you got to you got to analyze a little bit. Where is the inherent evilness, the inherent problem and trouble, and negativity of this person? I've got to be able to find it in them. And you look, is it in their head? If you take the head off, that's not really much of a problem, just there in the head. That concrete nature of them, independent existence. Is it in the body? And what I find so interesting is, if you really want to go back into the data, okay, can you imagine, just for a moment, go back, your difficult person now is saying something irritating to you. Can you go back a little bit into that space? Okay, they're saying something irritating to you. Let's analyze this. Okay? But please, let's analyze, okay? The whole here opens up. This is the raw data. Sound is coming out. Can you take it back to that? To the sound coming out. So sometimes I notice, wait, close your eyes for a minute. Just close your eyes. There's a fan on in the room. Maybe it's the AC, okay? Can you, for a moment, notice the sound, and then this happens almost in the next instantaneous moment. Can you notice how your mind then discerns what the sound is? Notice any other sounds in the room right now, too. How first you come in contact with sound, and then just almost at the same moment, but it's a moment later, the mind then defines what the sound is. Okay, please open your eyes. It's tricky, it's difficult, but could you get this sense there's this sound, okay, and then almost the next instant, I go, oh, AC. Or I go, oh, that thing is that, So here they've got sound coming out, right? But it's really a second later that you say irritating. Irritating. Why do I say irritating? Because that's what my karmic seeds are making me hear. Yeah. And then isn't it interesting how and this is an example, I don't know if this has ever happened. Your boss or a colleague, a coworker is yelling at you. It doesn't happen often, but there's some little irritating thing, and you're like, or somebody difficult like that is giving you some snipey remark, but somebody else in the scene finds it really pleasant. Have you ever seen that? Okay. So is it the person? Is it happening out there, or is it in the mind of people interpreting? It's a great way to break it down. Do you know what I mean? Understand? Yeah. Because this person doesn't like you, so when the boss yells at you, they're just elated. How wonderful. So the sound they hear, different karmic seeds ripening. Bless you. Different karmic seeds ripening. So they're layering on it, attaching something very different to it, something very pleasant. How can that be? Because I've got a solidly existing irritating person out there. How can they like that? That's a way to break it down for you to go, wow, that's interesting. They're interpreting it as something pleasant. How bizarre. So later, when I think about it and reflect on it, and if you can meditate on it, it starts dissolving the solidity of the irritating person. Okay, it takes time. So, and also the way they become irritating is based on the karmic nature that we set up of being a human in this part of the world with our language and our, that's why I interpret things in a certain way. Okay? That's why everything is empty. Everything lacks that inherent nature, that inherent concreteness, solidity, like that. Okay? So one thing is just, we're looking at the parts of it. The highest school says, this isn't really a course on emptiness, but the highest school, the philosophical tenets, the highest school would say that basically the data that is out there, okay, the mind puts a label on that, and that's how the irritating person comes into existence. My mind labels irritating person on that information that's out there. And it has to be a valid basis for my mind to label. There has to be a person. They have to be doing or saying or thinking something like that that would be coming into me. And then I take in that information, karmic seeds firing, that combination of that, and then I label, my mind takes in that information. But there's no inherently existent, irritating, difficult person out there. Why? Things that exist that way inherently are frozen in time and space. Inherent things do not change. They don't come from products. They don't come from other things, so they are not a product. It's very hard for us to get that concept. I'll try to break it down into something else. What do you want to call this? Anybody? A stick? A mallet? Everybody okay with that? A stick or a mallet? You with me? This is the dinger. Sorry. Okay? Stick or mallet? Does anyone disagree with that? Okay, we're together. That means, okay, that we have a conventional agreement to this. There's a conventional reality, relative truth. Okay? And that means we agree, based on being human beings with English language and this part of thing with our understanding, we would call this a stick or a mallet. Great. And we know we use it to, it's a dinger for the thing, for the bowl. Okay, so we've got that. So then you say, well, for me, I'm holding it. It feels pretty concrete to me. It seems solid. It's wood. We know wood is, if I hit you on the head, it's going to hurt. Okay, but then I'm going to say, well, let's look for the mallet. Let's look for the mallet here, in the mallet. Okay, so that one school would say, well, there's causes and conditions that created the mallet. Well, what are those? Well, people invented things, and they wanted something to ring, something to hit the thing with. And then if you had it in ancient days where they had big gongs and they needed a stick for that. And if you want to fast forward to our time, somebody would mass produce these and say, oh, I can sell these and make some money and we can have them. And then the center decided to buy them and have it as a ringer. And these are all what we would call causes and conditions. Causes and conditions that create the mallet to be here. Does everybody understand? I know you've had teachings on this before, right? Because you have great teachers. You have Emily, right? She's a great teacher, and other teachers that come, right? Second way the mallet comes into existence, it depends on its parts. So if you want to look at it, you say, well, this is the top. I'm just going to call that the top. Bottom, side, okay? And then I've got some wooden carving here, and wood is a material that's a part. Okay, I've got this thing here. Everybody with me? Okay? And you can even break it down and say, well, there's molecules in the wood. It's made up of molecules moving around a certain configuration, and okay, these are all parts of the mallet. Okay, so here's where it gets tricky. So can you find the mallet and its parts? No? Can't find the mallet. And if somebody said to me, where's the mallet? And I said, well, it's right here. So Buddhism gets very specific about emptiness. If I said it's right here, they're going to take the little part out and go, that little part of wood, it's the mallet? And we go, no. You know, the mallet's here. Oh, this piece of the yellow cloth? No. So you start to actually look for the mallet because it feels concrete to me. There's a mallet there, but you can't find it in any of the parts. If I took the top off and held it up, you wouldn't say it's a mallet. If I took the bottom, if I just took the handle off, you wouldn't call it a mallet. So you realize there's no mallet in any of the parts. And then people say, okay, fine. But when you put all those parts together, the collection of the parts is the mallet. Okay, but we just look through the collection. Now, we just did it briefly. To really convince yourself, you take a long time. I did it with my car many times. All the pieces of the car disassembled, right? So I'm just doing it more briefly because I think you've had some of this before. Okay, if I can't find the mallet in any of its parts, again, if I can't find the mallet in any of its parts, how is it possible that I put those parts together where I cannot find mallet and the mallet is there? Slowly, you have to think about it. If I cannot find the mallet in any of its parts, how is it possible to put all those parts together where there is no mallet, where I did not find mallet, and the mallet is there? Okay. What arises is a configuration, and we would say a valid basis of designation. And then my mind sees that according to the highest school now, the third way. My mind sees that data, and based on the karmic seeds ripening, my consciousness, how it interacts with this based on my language and things, I label on this mallet, and then the mallet comes into existence. I label on this mallet, and then the mallet comes into existence. I label on this valid basis of designation mallet, and the mallet comes into existence. Okay? What happens is my mind takes in the data, the raw data. Again, the fleshy oblong thing and the longer torso and the four appendages is my raw data. Okay? That comes into my, in that case, my eye consciousness. Again, with all of you now, your eye consciousness, seeing this. I see the information. Okay, and what happens, there's a gap of the labeling process. There's an information, but before my mind labels, there's a gap. And then my mind labels, okay? But we don't see the gap. We've lost the gap. Why? Because our ignorance covers over it. Our fundamental ignorance covers over the fact that our mind is labeling on everything. Labeling, and that's how things arise, depending on that. Okay. But what happens is, I have a valid basis of designation here. You know, a wooden stick you use to ring things, to bang on something. A wooden stick you use to bang on something. I'm going to break it down to that. Wooden stick to bang on something, okay? And then I have mallet. A concretely existing mallet appears to my consciousness. I've missed the labeling process because of my ignorance, because of my misknowing, okay? Why is the misknowing in my mind? Only from a previous moment of it in my mind, previous imprint of that in my mind. That's all. Because of fundamental ignorance has been in my mind since beginningless time. So I have an imprint of it. I've got a deep trench of that. So my entire reality mirrors that back to me, a misknowing. And everything exists concretely, especially myself. You know. And so when I'm going to bump up with a difficult person, that's going to be a problem. Okay. But the reason there's no inherently existent mallet here is it would have to be mallet for all things, right? If I throw this on the floor and a dog comes in, it's a chew toy. Right? But it is. But that's not the way we attach to our difficult person. They're a difficult person, so you need to slowly start poking. That's interesting. That person just went out to lunch with them and seems to be enjoying them. Right? How's that possible? Yeah. So we like to blame. Our culture, the fingers are all pointed out. And Buddhism, it's just about taking responsibility. So you're not blaming yourself. I'm waking up to take responsibility for my mind. Somebody challenging out there, I have some work to do. So here's on a higher level how to deal with this difficult person. And I know this isn't easy, especially when they're in your face, okay? Is they are your treasure. They are your greatest treasure. Why? They show you your mind, and they show you where you need to work. Our friends are easy. The friends are easy. Spend time with people, it's easy. I like you, you like me. Really happy to hang out with you. But not so much work to be done with the friends. And now something's disturbing me, so this is where the work is. Because eventually when you're a Buddha, nothing disturbs you. So if something's still disturbing you, I've got some work to do. And it's a valuable lesson. I need to know where I have to work. So it's the enemy, it's the difficult person that shows me that part of my mind where I have to do the work. Okay? We don't like it, but it's brilliant work to do with it. So make friends. When I was at Mother Jones magazine, I remember, and this is again the sincere act of kindness. I can't say that I was so kind at the time, but I was a new Buddhist in this environment. I was trying, and I went to some courses. And one of them said, oh, bodhisattvas, well, one of the things they do is they might be able to get somebody tea or coffee, or, we do this a lot for people. But they said another exercise you could do if you work in an office place with other people is you could do an exercise and learn what people drink at work. Well, I was in a 30-person office at the time. And I somehow a little bell went off, and I thought, that's interesting. Like, that would be an interesting exercise, like out of opening your heart. First, we never think about what other people drink, or maybe your friend, oh, he likes root beer. Like, you know that, but you don't know that about anybody you work with. So I kind of slowly was checking out, I drank a lot of coffee then, right? Now, for the benefit of all living beings, I don't drink coffee, okay? But I drank a lot of coffee, okay? But so I was at the coffee machine, and you're there, and you'd see people like, oh, no, can I have the milk? Can I have this? You kind of get it together. But I had to do a project early on in my time there with a guy that it seemed like nobody liked in the office. I was just noticing the first 2 weeks, and I'm like, I have to do this project with him, and nobody likes him. And I was like, I wonder what's wrong with him. And I became very intimidated by him. So I had to also pass his office when I went to get coffee. But I'm just noticing the interactions he's having with people, and it's really negative. And I hear people, talking about him, and I have to do this, and I'm like, Jesus, this is my first thing with this ogre, with this guy that really it started building up in my mind, right? And then I found out that he drank coffee with cream, no sugar. I managed to get that after a few weeks. And then it took me another few weeks, because we were going to work on this project, another few weeks to get up the nerve to get him a cup of coffee. Okay. I just made this game with myself. I'm going to get him a cup of coffee. But I was so intimidated by him. He was so mean, and he just seemed so ornery and miserable. And so I slowly, and then one day I decided I was in a good space, and I had to go by his office. I made it very natural. And I had to drop something off in his office. I went in with this piece of paper. And I went in, and I saw his cup, and then I said, and I had my cup. It was all orchestrated. But I had to, because I was very nervous, because he was very mean. And I went in, and I said, oh, here's the thing that you wanted. And would you like a cup of coffee? And then I said, cream, no sugar, right? So he was totally disarmed by that. Like, that's how he took his coffee. So he was immediately like, no one had ever offered him coffee. in the office. Anyway, everybody was afraid of him. So I saw him like, he couldn't speak for a moment. Really, he was like, and here's this little act of kindness. Like, nobody showed him that. So he didn't know what to do, you know. So he was, and then he said, fortunately, he said, okay. Right? And I took his cup. And then if you do that, you have to make a nice cup. You know, you don't want to, you know. So I just genuinely, like I'm making it for any of you, I made a nice cup of coffee. And you can't be like, you know, here, jerk. Here, you know, very nice, make it. And I didn't make any big deal. I just came into his office and I said, oh, there you go. Enjoy. And I left. That was it. We were friends after that. Really, that was it. Just one little act of kindness, and what happened is I learned from him, he had a really kind of bad childhood, was very asocial. He didn't know how to socialize. He didn't know how to just general banter with people. How you doing? How was the week? He didn't know how to do that. And he watched people do it, but he didn't feel comfortable doing it. He felt really inept. So as a result, he ended up in a little shell, more and more and more. And people perceive that sometimes as, you don't like me. You're mean. But he wasn't. He was just totally freaked out by socialization. Poor guy. He just, you know, he was really nice. He just didn't know how to interact with people over years of just dysfunction. And so everybody just kind of pinned him in there. He's nasty, he's mean. And then he kind of manifested like that. So then after this thing, and we're interacting, we're doing our project, and we're having a great time. And he, you know, and he was very relaxed with me, and we had a really nice time. And then people were coming up to me in the office and saying, you know, what did you do? Like, how is it that you guys are getting along? What, you know, and I said, I just got him a cup of coffee, you know, something simple, not, so we build stuff up in our minds too about the other person. And they're just a person like you. They're just hurting, and they're confused, and they muck up. And, you know, so some little, and I'm not any special thing. It wasn't any big deal. Just try some exercises. You get some of the things, some of the techniques I mention are, just put them in your toolbox a little bit. And you have to be skillful. You start to get skillful with what I'll bring out at certain times. What's going to work. Everything is an individual dance. So sometimes I'm using this thing and other times I'm using this thing, like that. Okay? So slowly, so that in some ways starting to cherish the difficult person. It's a bigger expression in your mind. It's a higher level practice, starting to cherish the difficult person. There are people that start to welcome the difficult person. You know, I have a friend, he's asking for problems now. He says, I'm down on my knees asking for a problem to come so I can work. I mean, that, you know, again, higher level practices, but you can get there. It seems absurd because nobody wants problems, but the thing is, in samsara, problems will come. What are you going to do with it? Are you going to repress it, deny it, shrivel up, you know, cave in on yourself, run, like that? So it's a little bit of, this is all a path of waking up, and it does take effort and time, things like that. Helpful? Is it helpful?
Yes.
Questions, comments? Yes.
I was meaning to ask you that I was wondering about, you mentioned about emptiness, right? Whenever I try doing meditation, so like when I do meditation in emptiness, everything goes blurry, everything disappears, but I can't do that properly, like focus on emptiness or focus on a difficult person who I wanted to resolve it with. So how can I make it easier?
So, sure. Sure. Slowly, what I would mention is you're pretty familiar with some of the smaller Lam Rim books, the emptiness parts of those. Have you read a little bit? It's good to read them again, and you might want to go into liberation in the palm of your hand and really go over the emptiness parts. Like read it again and again. And then I sometimes refer people to...
I go through Tonglen meditation.
So that's not emptiness meditation, Tonglen. That's a different kind of meditation.
I try combining it so that it helps me.
Okay. I wouldn't combine it. I would do them separately, personally, unless you've been instructed to do like that. But I find they're two really different meditations. So now, granted, if you're doing Tonglen, if you're familiar with Tonglen, is taking and giving. You're taking the suffering of others. It's a high-level practice for the bodhicitta path, to develop bodhicitta. Taking the suffering of others, having it chip away at your self-cherishing, and from a place of deeper space, peace, and happiness, I offer the goodness to others. So if I'm doing it and I think of the emptiness of others in that space, if I think of the emptiness of the suffering I'm taking, the emptiness of the joy I'm giving, that's fine. I find that.
But sometimes I disappear in it and it's blurry.
Yeah, I wouldn't do it like that. Have you been told to do it like that? Okay. Who told you to do it like that?
Carla, I went to a retreat in India and I
Okay. Okay. Well, that's fine if that works. It's just you want to make sure you're getting an authentic thing. Sometimes different teachers tell you different things, and so I didn't mean to be like, "Who's telling you that?" No. But also just to make sure it's authentic, I would make it a little simpler for yourself and try that. It's okay if it's working for you with Tonglen. That's no problem. It's more complicated that way because Tonglen on its own is quite a profound meditation. I would the fundamental book, How to Meditate, Venerable Sangye Kadro. The book's by Kathleen McDonald's her English name, her American name. Kathleen McDonald, I'm sure they have it here, How to Meditate. She has a nice emptiness meditation in there. I find that meditation, if you go over and over, is helpful, but if you can then use liberation in the palm of your hand to understand the four-part analysis. Have you done that? Do you understand that? Four-part analysis of how to meditate on emptiness. So what I would do is get some instruction on that and then meditate through that slowly. Okay, and just very much, it takes a lot of concentration. Go slowly through the different parts. Make sure I don't have the time to discuss. It's a whole other course. But slowly, understand that four-part analysis. And then, because Emily's done some of that here, I'm sure, right? Yeah. Slowly get some teachings on that to understand, and then do the meditation like that, is what I would say would be really helpful. Yeah, because it can be confusing at first, where you get, and also with Tonglen, you can get quite spaced out with, I got the, light and the imagery, and that's a beautiful meditation on its own as well. But it's great that you're trying that. Fantastic. Yeah, wonderful. There was another, yes.
Thank you for the talk. So my question is, you mentioned about karma, right? And growing up, I heard people talking about karma. For example, if someone lied in this lifetime and they did something bad, so their children would pay for that whatever they have done, like their action, and maybe the grandchildren. So what are your thoughts about it?
Yeah, we have this saying, I think Judeo-Christian things sometimes are the sins of the father are visited on, the children. It's not a Buddhist belief. The karmic seeds can only your particular activities that you've done with your body, speech, and mind create results for you only. So basically it ripens for your own experience, and no one else experiences somebody else's karmic imprints. That's what part of the teachings on karma in our tradition.
So which belief is it? The belief I heard is about Buddhism, right? It's not about
That's not a Buddhist teaching, not that I'm familiar with. Yeah. That it would be revisited on the children. They would have to have their own karmic seed to experience a result of something in their mind stream. And karma is very intricate, so until you're really highly realized, it's very hard to understand all the workings of karma. But at our level, we can understand some basic principles about karma and a little bit like that, and understand the 10 ethical guidelines of ways we want to try to practice positive behavior and avoid non-virtues that create negative karma, things like that. Yeah, sure.
I have a question.
Yes.
Could you please share a quick story that you have that you've had with the Lama?
A story with the Lama. The I'm just trying to think of there's a few. Well, when I met Lama Zopa Rinpoche, I'll try to make this a quick story, but I went to Kopan Monastery in 1987. I did my first Buddhist course, 10-day course in the spring of 87. And I wandered up there. I wasn't looking for anything. I had an accident, a small accident in Nepal, and I nearly broke my shoulder. So I couldn't trek for a few weeks. I had to wait. And I saw a poster for a meditation course, Kopan, and I called them. And I was very wary of cults in our culture. I had a friend that got stuck in a Moonie. Do you remember the Moonies? So in upstate New York, I was living in Washington, D.C. at the time on the East Coast, where I met Mary. And two friends of mine got stuck in a Mooney's place in upstate New York. And in the middle of the night, they took their shoes and they had to escape over a barbed wire fence in the middle of the night. They wouldn't let them leave. So I was very wary of stuff. And so I saw the meditation poster, and in my Lonely Planet travel guide, it had a thing about Kopan Monastery. So I thought, well, it must be legit if it's, It's like, what's that? If it's in Lonely Planet, it must be okay. If it's on TripAdvisor, it must be okay, right? So I called them. There was a phone number at the time, and I just wanted to check 10-day course. It was very cheap. It was, wasn't a money issue. I called and asked, and I liked the answers to all the questions they gave. But at the end, I said, they must have thought I was nuts, and I said, can I leave whenever I want? And they said yes. But of course, when I got there, who knew what? But they said yes. And then I said, do you keep our shoes? Right. And there was a pause on the other end of the phone. And then somebody said, you can't wear your shoes in the meditation tent, but you keep your shoes. So somehow I liked that answer, and I said, okay. And I went up there. And it was brilliant. I loved it. It was fantastic. And there was 10 days at Australian monk teaching, and it was great. So at the end, Lama Zopa Rinpoche came, my main teacher, and I had never met him, and all week I heard, God is coming. That he reads your mind, he's clairvoyant, he's amazing. And I was very cocky at the time. I was working in Washington, D.C. in politics. I thought I was extremely important. And you could request appointments. And there were 70 people in the course. And, of course, everyone wanted an appointment with him. And it wasn't possible. So they were encouraging group appointments. They were encouraging people to see the abbot and another lama there. But I'm from Washington, D.C. I'm important. So I want my own appointment. I want the guy. I want to see it all, And I was very, very much like poor motivation. This will be a really great story to tell my friends, and how cool is this? But I was an okay traveler. I was studying, I went to Thailand. I studied things. I went to the university there to check out the hill tribes. And so, but I want the works now. This is my trip. And I get an appointment. 5 of us got appointments. Little did I know I got an appointment because I was going to be a future director of Milarepa Center, right? And some other centers, right? So Rinpoche, yeah, he's like, finally now, like I've got it, So anyway, they show me to the room, and all these weird things that happened at Kopan anyway during the course. So I was a little bit kind of loosened up, but I'm waiting in the old Gompa, and 2 hours I'm waiting, and there's a huge thunder lightning storm on the hill. And I'm waiting, and the old Gompa was really cool with these little dark hallways and, and rooms with all these little old windows. But I'm waiting 2 hours, and I'm in this little kind of ante room there, and 2 hours they're keeping me waiting. I don't wait 2 hours. I mean, this was my attitude. It was just, I don't know who I thought I was, but I'm waiting. And so after 2 hours, and what happens is I think when you get near something very pure, like Rinpoche, the ego, the unhealthy parts of my ego get afraid and start trying to talk me out of it. And so I'm there, I don't need this appointment. I really don't have anything big to ask him, Other people wanted the appointment. They should go. It's dinner time. I mean, I had every excuse. I was like, why? So after 2 hours, I started to walk out, and the Australian monk comes in, sees me, and he says, oh, you're still waiting. And I said, I've decided I don't need this appointment. As people, I give him all my reasons. And he says, and he was very soft-spoken, very kind, wonderful teacher, no, you're here now, you'll see Rinpoche now. And somehow I didn't feel coerced at all. I felt like it was a message from the universe, like pay attention. Don't blow this and walk out, right? So all of a sudden I was like, And as soon as that happened, the door opened and they're ready. So they met me go through all my somersaults of my little, and I felt so intimidated to meet him because I heard he's clairvoyant and I thought he's going to, read all my sick thoughts, right? So I get to the doorway, he's sitting there, a little card table. He's at one corner. And as soon as I got to the doorway, I felt this wave of compassion and love from him, like pure, like I never felt before. Just this, like, all he wants to do is help me, really clearly, like really strong feeling. So I'm kind of intrigued, and I'd been to a teaching of his. He taught for 4 hours, right through lunch. I got 2 sentences of it. I didn't understand anything, but I was very, intrigued by somebody just felt really good around him. I go in the room, sit down, he sits down, and the lightning storm is happening. So he's in front of the bank of windows here. So it's like lightning coming out of his head. Perfect. And I'm like, this is so cool. In my mind, I'm like, this is so great. Like the story. And I thought, well, all we need right now is for the lights to go out. I'm not kidding. The lights went out. Not kidding. So I'm a little bit like, what? And the attendant brings a candle in, puts a candle down. Perfect. Everything's perfect. So I look at Rinpoche. I didn't know what to, and I said, well, I've had the, and Rinpoche's like, you have a question? So kind, right? Little did I know who he was, but he knew who I was, I suppose, So he, I said, I'm a little conflicted because I have my own religion. I hear these teachings. I like these teachings. Really spoke to me, really resonated. So I'm from a Jewish background. And I had a very strong Jewish identity at the time. So I start to say to Rinpoche, I'm from a Jewish background, and I like to go to synagogue, and my parents like when I go to synagogue, and sometimes we go to synagogue, and we enjoy going to synagogue, and I'm really nervous now, so I'm repeating synagogue and talking really fast, and synagogue. Right? And I just said, but now I came in contact with these teachings, and I don't want to have to choose or make a decision. I want to know what you think about that. And Rinpoche looks at me, and then he says, what's snagog? And I said, Jewish temple. And he said, and then we both had a big laugh over that somehow. And he said, no problem. He said, different paths to the top of the mountain. And one day your path will become clear. You won't have to make a choice. And no problem. He goes, you want to go to synagogue? Great. No problem. Well, I'd heard that before. I was like, yeah, all right. Nothing big, right? So then I said, I want to know how you manifest spontaneous loving kindness towards others. I don't know why this came out, but I think he was, orchestrating the whole thing. So, and this is about bodhicitta, and we had the teaching in the class, but I didn't remember the term. I didn't really know what that was about, but I felt like he knew about that. So I'm working in D.C. In the morning, I get the bus sometimes. I got my book, and I got a good seat on the bus. But now, like a woman gets on with a bunch of packages, and and you have the thought, I guess I should give up my seat. But I just wanted to give up my seat. Anytime somebody needed help, I just wanted to be there. But instead, I'd have a little bit like, oh, I got a good seat. Like maybe someone else will give their seat up. So I had a feeling he knew about that. And I said, I want to know, how do you manifest spontaneous loving kindness towards others? So I had heard at this time that he sometimes would go off in meditation for long periods of time in interviews. Lama Yeshe, his heart teacher, had been the extroverted one. He passed away. And Rinpoche was really the yogi, more meditative. So I asked this question, and Rinpoche over here closes his eyes, and he's just there, meditating or something. So I look over, and now, here we are. I don't know what to do. Like, what do? I look over at him, and And now I'm very uncomfortable. Like, is the interview over? Will I know when it's over? Will they come in for me? This is my mind. Do they knock? Should I go get somebody? Should I tap him? I mean, my mind was just like, you know, complete emergency alarm going off. Like, we can't just be still for a moment. Can you just be? Right? I'm a mess right now. I'm sitting here and I'm just like, pfft. So then I fortunately got the idea, I'm just going to sit and try to meditate too. Close my eyes. For some odd reason, this silly game pops into my mind. I used to play with my sister and brother. What would you do if you had $1 million? Right? We never really aspired to have $1 million, but somehow I'm now shopping for my family. Gonna get mom the house, and I get dad that car he wanted, and I don't know, maybe 10 minutes go by, I don't know. It could have been 30 seconds, but I'm in this fantasy, silly game, and suddenly I get conscious, and I think, oh my God, like, people are waiting, and I'm spaced out here, wasting time, thinking about what would you do if you had $1 million, what a silly thing, whatever, and then I think about my question again, how do you manifest spontaneous loving kindness towards others? I look over at Rinpoche, he opens his eyes, and he looks at me and he says, you know, it's not enough to wish for $1 million for your family, is it? So I looked at him, and it was kind of very subtle though. Like, I'd heard he was clairvoyant, and he just showed me that he was clairvoyant, right? But in a way, I think to get my attention, because I'm very dense, very thick, and I would have just moved on and never thought about it again, the whole Copan experience. So he kept trying to, you know, hook me in various ways to get my attention. Your teacher is out there trying to hook you. Many students I meet now say, how do I find my teacher? We put a lot of obstacles up, you know. Takes a level of sacrifice. It takes prayers from the heart or wishing. I happen to be fortunate to run into him before I knew what a teacher was, right? But they're trying to get our attention, and we're blocking it. You know, we got our earphones on, we got our eye shade on, I got my phone, I got all the noise, you know. I don't want the truth. Please don't tell me the truth, right? So it was brilliant, it was fantastic. You know, so then he told me some other advice, and that was my first meeting with Rinpoche. So very grateful for that first meeting. So I really wish you to open your hearts and calmly and kind of gently with yourself try to find the space to do some practice to open up some space in your mind where all the glory can come, and you can start to find that real synthesis with your practice that's going to make you happier, more peaceful, like that, and make it certainly easier for you to deal with difficult people, like that. So we're out of time, and I really want to thank you for coming. Thank you so much. Excuse me. And I hope if there's any benefit from this time, can we dedicate it to our being able to open our hearts and minds, especially to the difficult people in our lives, because there's some great, valuable lessons there for us to fold into our practice. May it help us progress along a path to full awakening so we can then be unlimited and have full potential to benefit all other beings. So thank you so much, and I want to thank everybody here, and Ocean of Compassion Buddha Center, and Margaret and Urs and everybody else. And I wish you all the best, and I may be back next year. So hopefully maybe around April, May or something. It's in the calendar. Okay, it's in the calendar. So thank you so much. I hope it's helpful.